I killed a $150,000 wire with one email because my boss said Paris wasn't for people like me. That's how the story really starts. No dramatic boardroom scene, no shouting match, just a single email that stopped a six-figure transfer and detonated a career built on pretension and politics. But to explain how it got there, I need to start a few weeks earlier, when I still thought I had a future under Madison. I worked, as a partnerships manager for a mid-sized SaaS company based out of Chicago. Not glamorous, but good money, decent benefits, and a lot of autonomy. My job was simple in theory: build relationships with enterprise clients, close sponsorships, and make sure our brand showed up strong at industry events. In practice, it meant 12-hour days, red-eye flights, and explaining over and over why exposure doesn't pay for booth design or client dinners. This year, the big win was supposed to be Paris Tech Connect, the European flagship conference that could make or break a fiscal year. I'd spent 3 months securing our slot, negotiating a sponsorship package that included a keynote presentation, a demo booth, and a roundtable with C-suite executives from half the French tech sector. The contract was under my name, literally, named presenter Daniel Reed. That was me. I earned that stage. I worked nights building the pitch deck, coordinating translation of our product materials, even learning how to pronounce half the French partner brands correctly. I don't speak French fluently, but I made damn sure I could deliver our message clearly and respectfully. Madison, my boss, didn't see it that way. She'd been hired 6 months prior as our new VP of marketing, replacing someone who actually understood people. Madison, though, was a different breed. She believed in optics. Her mantra was, "Perception is performance." Every meeting felt like a TED Talk nobody asked for. She loved branding herself as Madison Leclerc after spending one summer abroad in Provence, though she's from Ohio and speaks French like she's ordering perfume at the mall. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. She liked results, and I delivered them. But when she realized I'd secured the Paris slot on my own, she began to insert herself into every detail. Hotel bookings, slide colors, even what tie I should wear. "Paris is sophisticated," she'd say. "We can't afford to look provincial." The first red flag came during a team meeting. She was reviewing upcoming events when she looked at me and said, "Daniel, are you sure you'll be comfortable presenting in France? You don't really speak the language, right?" I laughed it off. "I've handled EMEA clients for years. It's all English on stage." She smiled, that thin, patronizing smile that managers practice in mirrors. "Yes, but we're representing a premium brand. Language is part of the experience." The room went quiet. No one challenged her. Nobody ever did. Later that week, I noticed something odd on the shared calendar. My session title, Building Scalable Partnerships. Across continents, still stood, but the presenter's name changed from Daniel Reed to Madison Leclerc. I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed. It stayed. I messaged her directly. "Hey Madison, saw the change on the Tech Connect calendar. Was that a mix-up?" She replied 2 hours later. "No mix-up. You'll still be attending, just supporting the booth this time. We decided to have executive leadership represent us on stage. Paris requires finesse." Finesse. That word hit harder than it should have. When I told my wife that night, she didn't even try to hide her anger. "You built that deal," she said. "She's using your work to boost her image." She was right, but in that moment I didn't know how to fight back. Not yet. Over the next week, Madison turned the office into her personal runway. Boxes of designer outfits arrived daily. She bragged about her immersive French itinerary, how she'd already arranged a photo shoot at the conference hall for brand storytelling. Every word out of her mouth dripped vanity, and every time I heard it, something in me snapped tighter. Then came the final insult. A team meeting in front of 30 people. She projected the Paris agenda and said, "We had to make some tough calls, team. Unfortunately, not everyone's ready for an international stage. Ordering coffee in French isn't optional when you're dealing with European executives. Laughter, a few uncomfortable looks. I stared at the floor, pretending I didn't feel my stomach twist. After the meeting, I stayed late, staring at the sponsorship contract open on my monitor. There it was in black and white. Deliverable. Keynote presentation. Named presenter. Daniel Reed. That clause wasn't just decorative, it was binding. If the named presenter changed, the contract required a review and reapproval of payment. I knew this because I'd written half the procurement checklist myself. That's when the idea formed. Quiet, logical, cold. She might own the stage, but I owned the payment. I gathered the receipts, screenshots of the name change, Slack messages mocking my American accent, and the finance memo confirming sponsorship payments over $100,000 required compliance review if deliverables changed. I didn't need revenge yet, just proof. By Thursday, the clock was ticking. The $150,000 sponsorship wire to the Paris organizers was scheduled for Friday noon Eastern. Once it went through, she'd get her spotlight, paid for with my work and the company's money. But there was one thing Madison hadn't accounted for. In our system, the named contact for all sponsor payments wasn't her. It was me. And all I needed was one click. When I left the office that night, I didn't drive home right away. I sat in the parking lot, engine off, thinking about everything. The late nights, the ignored calls, the condescension disguised as leadership. By the time I started the car, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Tomorrow, before that wire left the bank, I was going to stop paying for my own humiliation. When Friday morning came, the office smelled like espresso and ego. Madison was already there, parading around in a cream blazer and sunglasses, even though we worked indoors. She was talking loudly to HR about final preparations and how optics define credibility. I sat 3 desks away, quiet, methodical, watching the clock tick toward noon. I wasn't nervous, not anymore. That feeling had passed sometime around 2 a.m. when I reread every line of the sponsorship contract, each word confirming what I already knew. The moment she changed the named speaker without reapproval, she violated a material clause, which meant that by policy the wire could legally be recalled or suspended. But still, watching her strut through the office, sipping imported coffee like she was born on the Champs-Élysées, made my jaw lock. She was telling people she'd saved the brand from embarrassment, her exact words. Then in front of everyone, she turned to me. "Daniel," she said brightly, "since you're not traveling now, I'll need you to stay available next week to handle booth logistics remotely. It'll be good practice for future opportunities, maybe somewhere more local." I smiled back. "Sure, Madison. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly." Her grin widened, thinking she'd just delivered a masterclass in corporate diplomacy. She had no idea the wire cutoff was 11:59 a.m. When she disappeared into her office, I opened my email drafts. 2 were ready. The first, to our finance controller, marked urgent. "Hi, confirming that the sponsorship payment for the Paris Tech Connect should be temporarily paused pending deliverable review. The named speaker listed in the approved SOW, Daniel Reed, has been replaced without compliance clearance. Per Procurement Policy 4.3, this constitutes a material change requiring reapproval before funds can be released. Please hold the wire until confirmation." The second email went to the conference operations contact in France. "Hello, just confirming that our sponsorship deliverables are currently under internal review due to a change in designated presenter. We'll update you once compliance finalizes the revised approval." Both messages sat in my drafts, ready. I watched the digital clock on the corner of my screen. 11:54 a.m., outside Madison's office, she was on a call, laughing about how Parisians adore authenticity. I clicked send. At 11:56, the first reply came from finance. "Received. Holding payment. Will not release until compliance confirms deliverables." At 12:03, the conference ops team responded. Thank you for notifying us. In accordance with our sponsor policy, the booth and presentation slot will remain on hold until your internal review is complete. And just like that, the $150,000 vanished into limbo, legally frozen, untouchable. Madison's Paris dream still thought it had wings. Around 2 p.m., she strutted over to my desk holding 2 designer garment bags. Leaving for JFK tonight, she announced to anyone who'd listen. Big week ahead. Have a great trip, I said without looking up. Everything's handled on my end. Oh, I know, she purred. Let's keep the team spirit alive while I'm gone. And Daniel, try to use this week to brush up on your French. Bonjour is a start. The fake laughter that followed might have fooled some people. Not me. By 5 p.m., I was packing my laptop into my bag when a Slack message popped up from our finance controller, Julia. Hey, weird question. Did Madison get approval for that speaker change? She's been emailing about release status. No, I typed. Still under review. Good call, Julia replied. Legal said the clause is airtight. We're covered. Airtight. The word felt like oxygen. That night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed. Madison had posted on LinkedIn a photo of her boarding pass captioned, Heike, Paris, here I come. Grateful to represent our amazing team on the global stage. I actually laughed. Out loud. Because I knew that somewhere in a data center, a frozen wire was waiting for compliance review, and that her global stage was about to get very, very small. The next morning, I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone started vibrating nonstop. 5 missed calls from Madison, 2 from the CMO, 1 from HR. The first voicemail came in hot. Daniel, I'm at JFK, and they're saying our sponsorship was pulled. My badge doesn't show up in the system. Fix this. Now. Her voice cracked on the word now. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up the compliance thread, and saw the update. Due to the named speaker change and incomplete documentation, Paris Tech Connect sponsorship is on hold. Deliverables void until corrected. By noon, half the marketing department knew. The Slack channel was chaos. Panic emojis, whispered DMs, frantic messages like, does this mean we're not presenting? And why did ops revoke our booth? Madison didn't message me again that day, but when I saw her LinkedIn post vanish that afternoon, replaced with a generic traveling for meetings update, I realized that she finally understood. This wasn't a glitch. It was a consequence. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt calm. The kind of calm that comes when the person who humiliated you in public finally meets the one thing they can't control. A paper trail with your name on it. By Monday morning, the fallout had already begun to spread like smoke through a sealed room. The Paris conference organizers had officially flagged our sponsorship as non-compliant, and the finance team had frozen all event-related expenses. Madison was somewhere over the Atlantic, blissfully unaware that her photo op week was now a financial ghost. At 9:12 a.m., my inbox pinged. The subject line read, Urgent, Paris deliverables clarification needed. It was from the VP of Finance. He CC'd legal, HR, and, of course, Madison. Team, we've received notice from Tech Connect that the designated presenter for our sponsored keynote has changed without proper documentation. As per Section 6.2 of the sponsorship contract, this constitutes a material deviation. Please confirm who authorized the substitution and provide compliance approval by end of day. The word deviation hung in the air like a loaded accusation. 10 minutes later, a new message appeared. Madison had landed. Hi everyone, just saw this. No issue. I approved the change personally. We needed executive presence for a global audience. Daniel remains part of support staff. Support staff. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears. Then I opened the shared drive and pulled up the PDF of the signed contract. I scrolled to the clause I already knew by heart. Sponsorship deliverables contingent on fulfillment by name presenter as listed in Exhibit A. Any modification requires written approval from the contracting officer and finance sign-off prior to payment release. In Exhibit A, in bold, name presenter, Daniel Reed. I copied that line, pasted it into my reply, and added just 2 sentences. Per executed contract, I am the listed presenter. No written approval for substitution was submitted. Please advise. Then I hit send. Within 15 minutes, legal chimed in. Confirmed, the substitution nullifies current deliverables. Payment recall was appropriate. Julia from finance followed up. Wire reversal confirmed Friday 11:56 a.m. Funds remain unreleased. The silence that followed was almost musical. At 10:43, Madison called me directly from her Paris hotel. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another ping. Daniel, this isn't a good look. You've created confusion with your pause. The conference is furious. Please contact them immediately and fix this. You're part of the team, remember? Team. Right. The same team she'd told publicly I wasn't qualified to represent. I replied once, professionally. Hey, Madison, per policy, I can't override compliance decisions. Legal's handling it. No emojis. No tone. Just procedure. By noon, the conference organizers had reassigned our keynote slot to another company. Madison's executive presence was now officially uninvited, and yet, that afternoon, she still tried to spin it. She posted a filtered selfie from her hotel balcony. Sometimes leadership means pivoting gracefully. Excited for new opportunities in Paris this week. The audacity almost impressed me. But what she didn't know was that the Paris conference wasn't my only option. 2 months prior, I'd been in touch with London Data Week, a rival event scheduled just 10 days later. We hadn't committed because of overlapping budgets. Now, with $150K sitting frozen in a vacant sponsor slot in London, I made one call. Daniel, we thought you were locked with Tech Connect, their coordinator said. Not anymore, I replied. If you can slot us in at the same rate, I can wire funds today. We can. Can you deliver a keynote? I've had one written for weeks. That afternoon, I reallocated the sponsorship budget to London, using the same compliance channel Madison had ignored. All approved, all legal. Then I sent one final internal email. Per finance and legal confirmation, Paris deliverables void. Funds reassigned to alternate approved event, London Data Week. Speaker, Daniel Reed. Send. It took less than 10 minutes for the panic to start. Madison's messages popped up one after another. Why would you do this? You've embarrassed the department. You had no authority to... She stopped mid-sentence when legal replied directly to her, Correction, Daniel had full authority as contracting officer for the sponsorship. The reassignment was in full compliance with procurement protocol. I didn't see her next email. I imagined she threw her phone. That evening, I got a message from the one person I hadn't expected. Jean Levesque, Director of Partnerships for Levesque Group, our biggest French client. Daniel, we received word your company won't be at Tech Connect. Is everything okay? We were looking forward to your session. I stared at that message for a full minute before typing back. Hi, Jean. Yes, there's been a change internally. I'll be presenting at London Data Week instead. Same content, updated materials. Would you like a private virtual briefing next week? His response came instantly. Absolutely. Send invite. And Daniel, I preferred your session title anyway. That line hit deeper than it should have. It wasn't just validation. It was proof that substance still mattered somewhere. By the time I shut my laptop that night, the dominoes were falling exactly as they should. The conference had dropped us. The client had followed me. And the company had started asking the one question Madison couldn't spin with a filter. Why did a VP lose $150,000 in brand exposure over a name on a contract? The truth was finally breathing on its own, and it smelled like justice. The first message hit my phone at 4:23 a.m., a missed call from an international number. then another, and another. By the time I rolled over and checked, Madison had left 7 voicemails in the span of 10 minutes. Her voice in the first one was tight, brittle. "Daniel, I'm at the venue and they're saying our badge was revoked. The booth's gone. Fix this immediately. I'm serious." By voicemail number 3, the mask cracked. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? I'm standing here with the Tech Connect director and they're saying we're not even listed as sponsors. Do something." By number 5, she was crying. I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and checked my inbox. The headline email came from Tech Connect Operations. "Per your earlier notice and compliance verification, we've rescinded sponsorship privileges pending clarification of deliverables. The booth and presentation slot have been reassigned." Below that, finance. Paris budget reclassified under unfulfilled contract, non-approved deliverables. Reallocation to London. Data week complete and confirmed. All legal, all by the book. And yet somehow it still didn't feel real. Not until I opened LinkedIn and saw the fallout hit her public image like shrapnel. The post she'd written, the one with her boarding pass and "so proud to represent our brand in Paris." Caption was flooded with comments. "Wait, you're not listed on the Tech Connect site? Didn't your company cancel?" Seeing a different speaker name on the keynote lineup. The post vanished by noon. At 2 p.m., she finally called me from her hotel. I answered this time. "Daniel," she said, her voice half whisper, half snarl, "I don't know what you think you've done, but you've humiliated this company." "No," I said evenly. "I protected it." "Protected? You torpedoed our biggest appearance of the year. Madison, you changed a contractual deliverable without compliance approval. The clause triggered automatically. It's not personal. It's policy. You could have told me. I did, 3 times. You called it finesse." Silence. Then through gritted teeth, "This isn't over." "Actually," I said, "it might be. Legal's reviewing the file." Click. I expected fury. What came next was chaos. By the next morning, internal Slack channels were on fire. Marketing associates whispering in DMs. The head of sales sent out a carefully worded memo. "Until further notice, all sponsorship communications must go through the partnerships office. Please refrain from engaging directly with event organizers without compliance oversight." Translation: Madison was benched. At lunch, HR requested a meeting to clarify the Paris situation. I walked into the small conference room with a folder in hand. Printouts of every email, screenshot, and contract clause. I didn't posture. I didn't editorialize. I just laid the receipts down like evidence in a courtroom. The HR manager, a quiet woman named Priya, scanned the pages and let out a long breath. "So she reassigned herself as speaker and mocked you for not speaking French?" "Multiple times," I said, "in meetings on Slack. I didn't make it an issue until it cost us 6 figures. Priya looked up slowly. "Do you have those messages?" I slid the printouts across the table. "Everyone." When the meeting ended, she said the same phrase 3 different people had said since Friday. "Good call, Daniel." Meanwhile, Madison was still in Paris trying to salvage what was left. She managed to bluff her way into a few cocktail hours, but without the official sponsorship badge, she was just another attendee. And everyone knew it. The French partners she'd bragged about meeting refused to schedule time. The Levesque Group rep, John, emailed me directly. "Madison reached out to meet, but we'd rather continue our discussion with you during London. Her behavior in Paris has been noticed." That line, "her behavior has been noticed," was pure corporate poetry. On Wednesday, the London Data Week team sent over mock-ups for our booth design. It was smaller, simpler, but solid. I finalized the deck, polished my keynote slides, and even added French subtitles to a few of the visuals. Not to prove anything, just to make a point. The same day, I got a ping from the CMO. "Hey Daniel, can you jump on a call?" Her tone was different, not sharp, careful. On the call, she sighed. "We're getting reports from the Paris team. This whole thing looks bad. Madison's saying you sabotaged the event. Is that true? I took a slow breath. No, I followed policy. I documented every step. Do you have proof? I sent it to HR this morning. Silence. Then, good. Keep your head down, okay? The board's asking questions. That night, as I closed my laptop, I realized something important. I hadn't raised my voice once through this entire mess. I hadn't ranted, hadn't plotted revenge. I'd just followed the rules Madison thought were beneath her, and those rules had teeth. The next morning, I boarded my flight to London. The air felt lighter, not from altitude, but from justice finally catching up. When I landed, a text from Jean was waiting. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Our executives will join remotely. They specifically requested your session. I smiled, turned my phone off airplane mode, and walked out into the gray London drizzle. Somewhere in Paris, Madison was probably still rehearsing the speech she'd never give, and somewhere between the airport and the conference hall, I realized something else. She'd spent months trying to teach me how to perform, but I didn't need to perform anymore. I just needed to show up. When I walked onto the London Data Week stage, something inside me shifted. No one was taking photos for personal branding. No one was talking about optics. It was just rows of professionals, notebooks open, watching the slides come alive behind me. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I'd spent months building this presentation, and now it was mine again. Unfiltered, unclaimed. I started with a story about connection, how partnerships weren't about language or prestige, but about listening. It wasn't rehearsed corporate poetry. It was raw, real. The room leaned in. I could feel it. Halfway through, the screen behind me flashed the Levesque Group logo, the same client Madison had nearly cost us. I caught Jean's face on the monitor in the front row, smiling from his video feed in Paris. When I finished, the applause didn't just sound polite, it sounded earned. After the session, a small crowd gathered. A few wanted to talk shop. Others just wanted to say thank you for being honest. Then Jean called. "Daniel," he said, "you speak better business than most people speak French. Send me the updated proposal. We'll sign next week." When I hung up, I realized that was the exact moment Madison's entire empire of performance collapsed. By Monday, the HR investigation was in full swing. The Paris incident had spiraled upward. Now it wasn't just about compliance. It was about discrimination. HR had quietly interviewed several people from our department. Someone leaked that Madison's French fluency comments weren't a one-time joke. She'd been making similar remarks to other employees. "You should work on your accent," she told one. "You're too local for Europe," she told another. The formal complaint came from an anonymous source, though everyone knew it wasn't anonymous for long. By Wednesday, an email arrived. "Effective immediately, Madison Leclerc is on administrative leave pending internal review. Please route all event-related matters to the partnerships office." It didn't say my name, but everyone knew who that meant. The next few days were chaos. The CMO wanted updates on the London sponsorship. The CFO wanted to know how the Paris loss could be recovered. HR wanted a detailed timeline of every decision Madison had made, which luckily I had already documented. When they called me into a conference room for the final debrief, it wasn't an interrogation, it was respect. The HR director spoke first. "Daniel, you followed every policy correctly. You did everything by the book. That's rare." I nodded, saying nothing. "Off the record," she added, leaning forward, "we needed someone like you to draw a line. Thank you." A week later, the internal memo went out. Following review, leadership has made organizational adjustments. The marketing VP role will be restructured. Daniel Reed will assume interim responsibility for EMEA partnerships and event strategy. I wasn't promoted officially, but the title didn't matter. What mattered was the sentence that followed. "Effective immediately, all sponsorship agreements must adhere to deliverable-based approvals. Named contributors cannot be replaced without written consent." My clause, now company policy. That same afternoon, the Levat Group signed a 7-figure renewal. In the signature line, my name was listed as account lead. Madison's name, deleted from all records. The CMO sent a congratulatory email to the entire company. Special thanks to Daniel for his professionalism and quick recovery after the Paris event. The London presentation was exceptional. No hashtags, no filters, just truth. That evening I sat alone in the quiet office long after everyone had left. The city lights flickered through the blinds, catching the silver edges of the award plaques on the wall, most of them hers. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe. It was Madison. Her voice was smaller this time, trembling just beneath the surface. "Daniel, they fired me? You know that, right?" I heard. "You could have stopped this. You could have talked to me." "I tried," I said simply. "You laughed." Silence, then she whispered, "They'll replace me with you." "I don't need your job, Madison," I said. "Just my respect back." I hung up before she could respond. 2 weeks later, the board invited me to present at the next quarterly meeting, not as an employee on trial, but as an example of ethical leadership under pressure. Afterward, the CEO stopped me in the hallway. "Daniel," he said, "you turned a $150,000 disaster into a 7-figure deal. That's poetic." I smiled faintly. "No, sir, that's accountability." He chuckled. "Whatever it is, we need more of it." That night back home, my wife handed me a glass of wine and a knowing look. "So," she said, "did Karma finally book a flight home from Paris?" I laughed softly. "Yeah, but it landed in London first." We toasted, quietly. No champagne, no selfies. Just the sound of two people who'd watched patience outlast ego. And for the first time in months, I slept like a man who didn't need to prove anything anymore. When I woke up the next morning, a new email was waiting from the executive office. "Daniel, the board wants you to draft a proposal for next year's events policy, including staff development. Feel free to suggest new initiatives." I stared at the screen for a moment, then started typing. At the top, I wrote, "Language shouldn't be a gatekeeper to opportunity." It wasn't revenge, it was reform. The kind Madison would never understand. And yet somehow I hoped she was watching, because she'd finally see what real leadership looked like. A month later, I was back in Paris. Only this time, I chose the flight, I chose the meeting, and I chose the story. It was raining when I stepped out of the cab, the kind of Paris rain that smells like metal and history. The conference banners from last month had already been taken down, but the marble steps of the Palais des Congrès still gleamed under the streetlights. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in. Last time, I was told I wasn't ready for this city, that I didn't fit its image. Now I was here on my own terms. The company had sent me to finalize the new partnership program with the Levat Group and 2 additional European firms that came through after London. My badge read, Daniel Reed, Head of Strategic Partnerships. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Every inch of it. When I walked into the boardroom, Jean was already waiting. He rose with a grin. "Monsieur Reed," he said, shaking my hand, "you finally made it to Paris." "About time," I replied, "though I still can't order a coffee without confusing someone." He laughed. "Don't worry, it's not about the accent. It's about intent." That line stuck with me. We talked for hours about product integrations, timelines, rollout strategy. No pretension, no hierarchy, just mutual respect. At the end of the meeting, Jean signed the final page of the contract and pushed it across the table. "You know," he said, "your former VP sent us so many emails trying to impress us with French phrases. But you spoke business. You listened. That's what earned this deal." I nodded. "I just did my job," he smiled. "And you did it well. Don't lose that." When I left the building, the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart, sunlight spilling through in narrow golden strips. I ducked into a small cafe on Rue Beaumarchais. The kind of place where the tables wobble and the waiters pretend not to notice. I ordered a coffee in slow, careful French. Un café, s'il vous plaît. The waiter smiled, nodded, and replied, just as slowly, Bien sûr, monsieur. It wasn't perfect French, but it was enough. I sat by the window, watching the street breathe again. Somewhere across the city, Madison was probably sitting in another cafe. Or maybe not. Word around the office was that she'd been dismissed, without cause, but with consequences. HR never elaborated, but I didn't need them to. In corporate life, silence is the loudest punishment. 2 weeks after her departure, the company announced a new initiative, my initiative, the Global Communication Equity Program. Every employee would now have access to free language learning, cultural training, and stipends for international assignments. No one would ever lose an opportunity because of an accent again. That was the real win. Not the money, not the promotion, the principle. For months, I'd replayed Madison's words in my head. Ordering coffee in French isn't optional. So here I was, in the city she said I didn't belong to, sipping my imperfectly ordered coffee and realizing how wrong she'd been. I didn't need to sound French to be respected. I just needed to stop paying for someone else's prejudice. When I checked my phone, I had an unread message from our CEO. Daniel, great news. The board approved your program proposal. Effective next quarter. Proud of what you've built. I typed back one line. Thanks. Sometimes the best way to lead is to cancel the wrong payment. I put the phone down and leaned back. Outside, the city moved like a living painting. Vendors shouting, engines humming, rainwater glinting on cobblestones. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't calculating my next move. I was just free. A man once humiliated for not fitting the brand, now shaping how that brand treated its people. I smiled, took one last sip, and left a tip that felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. As I stepped back into the street, I thought of all the quiet employees sitting under loud managers who confused arrogance with leadership, and hoped they'd find their own version of this moment. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about reclamation. I didn't destroy Madison's career. I just stopped financing my own disrespect. And that, finally, was worth every cent.